Hi everyone, I'm Marge, and I'll be moderating today's session. Welcome to modern log management that drives business outcomes, reduce log costs, improve visibility, and simplify operations. Today, we'll see how top organizations bring their logs together in one platform to get more value and save costs. Use smart telemetry to improve the customer experience and boost resilience, productivity, and innovation with modern log management analytics. But before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. So, to minimize distractions, all participants will be muted and cameras will remain off throughout the webinar. If you experience any connection issues, simply log out and rejoin using the same link. We love to hear from you, so please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A or chat feature. And finally, today's session is being recorded and a copy will be shared with all registered attendees. And now, it's a privilege to introduce our speaker. We have Raymond McCullough, Senior Observability Consultant and Developer at Avocado Consulting. So Raymond is a 2024 GTIA A&Z Future Leader Award winner, and he helps organizations simplify log management, reduce tool sprawl, and turn log data into actionable insights, combining strong technical expertise with a people-first approach. So I guess we're all ready to begin. Raymond, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marge. Let me start sharing my slide deck. All right. Thank you everyone for joining, and it's nice to meet you all. The purpose of this session is on screen, and we're going to be covering a lot of the why and a little bit of the how for modernizing logs. So firstly, why would you want to modernize your log strategy? Why would you want to unify and provide contextual information for your visibility over your business? Why do you need business intelligence and AI to streamline that business intelligence? And then later on, we're going to be covering a little bit of the how. So we'll provide an introduction into Dynatrace Grail. We'll be covering what types of data Dynatrace Grail supports. How can I get logs into Grail? And how does the ingest and licensing work? Before I get into too much of that, though, just very quickly, who is Avocado? So Avocado is an Australian founded and based consulting firm with over 120 active consultants who have decades of experience in the IT industry, particularly across testing, delivery, and observability, of which we'll be talking about today. And you can see a lot of our key achievements, clients, and stats up there. So to delve right into it, why should you modernize logs now? So you may have been using a traditional log management solution. You may have a log management solution that's across your enterprise. Why should I, as an owner of that enterprise solution, consider modernizing logs today? So what we're seeing across a lot of our clientele and what service delivery managers and product owners are asking of us is that observability budgets are consolidating quickly. So in the previous world, you would have a particular monitoring solution or an observability solution for logging, maybe one for infrastructure, maybe one for real user perspective monitoring, and so forth. These days, a lot of that is rapidly consolidating into a single budget under the umbrella term observability. And we see that as an opportunity to not only consolidate the budget, but consolidate the tool sprawl into a singular tool away from the siloed perspectives of yesteryear. And we'll get a little bit into why a unified platform is beneficial later on. But nevertheless, observability budgets consolidating, again, is a great opportunity to consolidate the solutions as well, to simplify and to save costs. Logs themselves are foundational for observability. So if anyone's heard me speak on observability before, you know that logs are one part of that. You've also got events, user monitoring, traces, and metrics. All of those are very key to observability. However, logs are the foundation. They've been there since day one, and in order to achieve business-based monitoring, we don't see logs going away anytime soon. So it's important to get logs right as a foundation for observability, before we extend out to all of that other capability. And the last reason is that traditional log management solutions were built at a time when cloud native and AI applications weren't around. And so they haven't been built to scale and to account for the additional scope and complexity that comes with those cloud native and AI environments and their applications, which are ever shifting, ever growing, and growing more complicated as time goes on. I'm sure many of you would be experiencing that. So just doubling back on the factor of logs being a key to observability, recent reports from Gartner, who scan the industry, notes that over 50% of organizations, all 50% of their budget, excuse me, is spent exclusively on logs within their overall observability budget. So logs are incredibly important, and they are taking up quite a large bit of the budget, at least side of the capability. 36% of those organizations spend more than 1 million per year on logs, and 40% and those organizations show a 40% growth year on year of that cost. So again, logs are here to stay and they're growing constantly. We'll talk a little bit further about cloud native applications and why some of those log content might be growing later on. But logs are here to stay, and we need to figure out how to address that. So why does traditional log management need reinvention? So as mentioned, traditional log management solutions are not built for the scale and the complexity of cloud native and AI-driven applications. So as a result, they themselves cannot scale to a degree that is cost efficient, and they pass that cost onto yourselves as the customer. So we found that when organizations are migrating from, say, a traditional three-stack application into cloud native Kubernetes or container-based architectures, when they've refactored that application, their volume for logs has gone up 100 to 1,000-fold for that particular application. And that again depends all on the way that environment has been re-architected and refactored. So these traditional log management solutions are not accounting for that when those solutions are used to monitor these cloud environments. The other thing is that these traditional log management solutions do not allow you to perform any kind of automated correlation. All correlation is manual, so you need to, as a user, go through and identify maybe a transaction ID or a postage ID or something for you yourself to perform that correlation. There is no underpinning correlation or causation within these log management solutions. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the high complexity and the increased demands of cloud native and AI-based applications that are not only more complicated, but often scaling, growing, or being created and destroyed very, very quickly. These log management solutions are not designed to account for that, and as such, they can be very, very difficult to maintain that scale to be able to flex, grow, and shrink as your business needs. So that comes to how do we solve that problem? Well, we at Avocado like to use the Dynatrace platform for that. I'm not going to get too deep into the various different aspects of Dynatrace, as this session is primarily focused on logs, but we'll be talking about Dynatrace's storage platform, Grail, how it relates to logs, and all of the underpinnings of that. But at a high level, the Dynatrace platform allows you to provide observability and visibility for everybody within an organization, from your executives and your business analysts who are interested in organizational KPIs, business process success rates, etc. It provides visibility for the IT operations teams and SREs from an infrastructure perspective, topology availability, and so forth. It provides visibility for your platform and engineering and DevOps teams to make sure that your CI/CD pipelines are healthy, that a recent deployment has not made something unhealthy, or if it has, to let them know that that's happened, and your development teams directly to be able to provide insights in the dev environment as these teams are developing prior to actually breaking any changes in the non-production or the upper production environments. So within Dynatrace, how does Dynatrace help us maximize value and minimize cost? So Dynatrace itself allows you to analyze logs instantly in context to all of your telemetry. So one of the key differentiators for Dynatrace in and Grail is that it not only captures your logs as well as your other data types like your traces, your metrics, your events, and so forth, but it also automatically builds out a topology map of all of your resources and all of the data points that are connected to those resources. So you don't need to do any correlation or any schema writing or any understanding to be able to tell Dynatrace that this particular set of logs is associated with these processes, these services, these hosts, these containers, etc. It does all of that automatically. Beyond that, Dynatrace provides many different options for retention and usage-based both costing and activity. So we'll dive a little bit further into the how section of this presentation, but there are very fine-grained controls as to how long you may want to store log data and the ability to treat different log data differently. So you may want to retain some data for 7 days, you may want to retain other data for 7 years, and that Dynatrace allows you the flexibility to be able to control that in a very fine-grained way without needing to worry about storage layers or anything like that. So there's no rehydration at any time of any logs. So there's always what's called hot storage. So you're not having to worry about moving storage to, an archive bucket or to frozen or cold storage over a long-term period. If you configure it in Dynatrace to be stored for 10 years, it will be stored for 10 years and readily available to you. You don't need to worry about any of those details under the hood. And lastly, Grail allows the data to be accessible for everyone. So there is an AI-powered natural language model where you can query Dynatrace through natural language. You don't need to be an expert. And this allows everybody, not just the developers, not just the people that are interested in Dynatrace or the experts in Dynatrace, to be able to get the answers they need out of Dynatrace itself and take advantage of all of that. So where do we want to get to with modernizing log management using Grail? How can Grail help us achieve better outcomes outside of simply costing and providing easier management and providing all of that data in one place? How can Dynatrace actually help us improve the way we use logs and the outcomes that we get from logs? So I like to think of this as Grail provides us the ability to, through various tools, including a causal AI, the ability to identify root cause analysis and the owner of a root cause incident, to be able to spend more time looking at the outcome of a log and the outcome of either a technical state or a business state of the application, as opposed to logging onto a system and understanding what the content of the log is actually saying. It's more about the outcomes than it is the sheer content of the log that you're looking at. So to that end, Dynatrace does have the ability to automate that root cause analysis and improve operational effectiveness in that way. As mentioned, there is a causal AI that underpins all of the data within Dynatrace, called Davis. And Davis allows you to, it's basically a causal AI engine that looks at that topology mapping and through that topology mapping is able to identify the root cause owner of a problem and very quickly surface that as a summarized problem rather than focusing on individual alerts and raising individual alerts for multiple different parts of that one issue, which we find is often the case when you're monitoring things at scale. It's very easy to get into that. So beyond this assists us to elevate employee productivity and customer experience through rapid and human understandable context to close and to resolve MTTX. So it is much, much faster through this topology mapping, through the AI understanding of these log files to understand where the root cause was of a problem and therefore fix it sooner so that your customers are able to get back on track or your web server is able to serve those sales as much as you need. So as mentioned, underpinning all of that is the Davis causal AI engine Dynatrace does also have a strong area in both Gen AI and agentic AI to be able to not only query your data and to present that in a human readable way, but also to communicate with other systems out there based on AI answers, or to be able to send requests to other agentic AI systems to be able to perform automated root cause fixing and self-healing as well. This helps to prevent reactive firefighting and again just reduces the need to have eyes on glass and resolve problems rather than fixing the problems first. So at a high level, the unified observability with Dynatrace is powered by Grail. So this Grail is a purpose-built data lakehouse. It is fit for needs for the next 10 plus years in terms of scalability and complexity based on our and Dynatrace and Gartner's understanding as well. It is a schemaless architecture, so you don't need to worry about predefining your log schemas or your database tables or anything like that to be able to get data into Grail. So it's very, very quick very, very fast time to value in that sense. You don't need to worry about any of that business. There's no storage tiers, as mentioned earlier, so you don't need to worry about shortening your hot buckets and transitioning data out of hot buckets into cold buckets. It's all simplified in one storage layer, and it provides that end-to-end context through the topology mapping that I mentioned earlier. So it's able to understand that 5,000 error logs came from this particular process, and therefore it can show you that that process was the original root cause of a particular technical issue that occurred. You can see further on the diagram, which we'll get a little bit further into during the how section of this slide deck, is the different ways you can onboard that log data into Grail and the ways that you can make use of that. So in short, there are agents. There's something called a log ingestion API, and there are extensions which you can use to get the data into Grail. And once it is in Grail, you've got automated answers through Davis AI, which I've already spoken about. You have integrated log insights through the default out-of-the-box views that Dynatrace provides, and it also gives you the capability through DQL and log analytics to provide custom searches and custom views for business or technical analytics as you need. So in short, how do you modernize your log management? You need to make sure that whatever strategy that you have allows you to scale cost efficiently so that you maximize the value and optimize the cost. Dynatrace allows you to do this greatly through mitigating the amount of time it takes to both onboard data, but also to structure or to reroute that data. So if you wanted to only, ingest all logs except for your audit logs, because you only use your audit logs once every 7 years, and you want to reroute that to an S3 bucket, Dynatrace allows you to selectively onboard data so that you don't need to, so that you can scale cost efficiently, so that you don't need to onboard absolutely everything if you don't need to. Grail allows you to unify and contextualize all of the telemetry that you have. So as mentioned earlier, with that topology mapping, Dynatrace automatically assigns and understands and shows to you that these logs and these business events and these metrics are coming from their respective entity or their thing out in the environment, whether that's a host or a container or a Kubernetes service or what have you, so that you don't have to ask the question of where did this log come from? You know immediately what is the context of this information that the observability tool is providing to me. And it enables proactive and AI-driven insights through the agentic and the human language AIs that I talked about earlier, both through in terms of problem root cause analysis, as well as the ability to integrate and to automate that self-healing or the root cause fixing rather than root cause analysis that we spoke about earlier. You want to be at the front foot with those causal analytics that is aware of your environment in context to be able to take advantage of all of that topology information. All right. I'm going to go ahead now onto more of the how section of this presentation. So we've talked a lot about why you would want to modernize your log system and a little bit of what Dynatrace can do to help that and how Grail fits into that. This is going to be covering a little bit more of how you actually translate your logs from your existing environments or even solutions into Grail and some of the best practices around that as well. So I've talked a little bit about that previously, but the benefits of logs on Grail are numerous, but the ones that I think are on screen I think are most topical. So the fact that there is unified storage that Grail provides, you do not need to be aware of any schema, you do not need to be aware of any database tables or mapping or anything like that. However, Grail still provides you the ability to store your logs, metrics, traces, and events all in the one platform so that you don't need to look at disparate siloed tools to understand the various slices or various perspectives rather of your environment. Grail has enhanced scalability. It is prepared for multi-petabyte per day ingest, and we've not seen any customer reach anywhere near that. I guarantee you Dynatrace Grail is ready for whatever your needs are. It has cost-efficient storage, so it is optimized for cost savings without the need to micromanage your data between hot and cold storage, as I mentioned earlier, as well as provides quite scalable and easy ways to select, parse, or to remove certain log data if you don't need it, to be able to again make most out of that cost of the Dynatrace platform itself. It provides you instant answers without the need for a schema, indexes, or manual tagging. The second that the logs are in Dynatrace, that data is available to you. You don't need to do any pre-work. You don't need to do any post-work to make sure that that data is accessible. And it provides extremely fast query performance due to Dynatrace's cloud-native data lakehouse technology, which again is scaled up to the ability to ingest multi-petabyte per day data, so that you're able to make the most use of your environment rather than needing to rely on multiple different solutions for logging. All right, so what options do you have, excuse me, for onboarding your data, particularly log data, into Dynatrace? So there's a few different options. Dynatrace has its own proprietary agent called the One Agent, which you can deploy out to your environment, and it provides a lot of automated topology mapping. It does a lot of that work for you. So in most cases, we use the One Agent as sort of the default recommended, especially if the environment is complicated or you're not sure what your logging standards are just yet. The One Agent is the fastest way to get there, and it provides you all of that value for very, very little setup. There are also log monitoring APIs. So the Dynatrace platform exposes some APIs which you can call to ingest the data. It's compatible with OpenTelemetry, FluentD, Logstash, and FluentBit, just to name a few. But if you can get your log data in a JSON text or OpenTelemetry protocol format, then you can get that log data into Dynatrace, and it's extremely flexible in that way. Dynatrace also supports syslog for data ingestion, and it also has a framework called extensions, which allow you to basically write custom scripts or custom integrations with a solution or an API or a database to extract those logs and to ingest them into Dynatrace directly. So, what is the consumption model like? Once I know what options I have to ingest my logs into Dynatrace, what is a high-level process or the life cycle, excuse me, of those logs? So number one is collect and capture. We spoke a little bit about the options in the previous slide, but the idea here is the more coverage that you have of relevant data, so relevant technical information, relevant business information, it is important to collect all of that information into Dynatrace as that one source of truth. Step two is contextualize. So there's a system in Dynatrace Grail called Open Pipeline that allows you to select, parse, edit, or provide permissions or retention settings for your logs as they enter the Grail data lakehouse. So that's the core set of controls that allows you to tune, update, or retain for a long period of time certain individual logs, and it's quite flexible in that sense. And the last one, obviously, is the analyze. So those logs immediately become available to um, Davis AI, Davis's causal AI analytics, to be able to use them in any analysis for any problems that may come up in future. And obviously, you've also got the ability to provide those logs visible for dashboards or notebooks or for automation workflows where you might need to provide self-healing flows that integrate with an Ansible or anything like that. So that's the high-level consumption model of make sure your logs are there, make sure that the logs are processed or routed or retained for the correct amount of time and information, and then that data is then available for you to use and analyze in any way you see fit. So to cover some of the best practices, firstly, you want to establish the permissions and retention in the pre-ingest phase. So before you ingest your logs, you want to have an idea at the very least of what the permissions and the data retention for those logs are going to be. You then want to make sure that you ingest those logs into the single data repository, which is Dynatrace Grail that we spoke about earlier. We want to make sure that we have the ability to granularly monitor cost after we ingest that data. And we also want to make sure that our queries for that data, whether that's on a dashboard or a notebook or an automation flow, are optimal. And so these optimized queries also drastically help reduce and optimize any of those both performance issues or costs as well. So you can see there is a nice visual showing how these best practices map to that collect and capture, contextualize, and analyze phase that I spoke about earlier. So establishing permissions in the pre-ingest phase. There are a few different options that Dynatrace provides. The main one that is used across enterprises is buckets. So buckets are individual storage tables within Grail that you can route logs to be able to say that these logs must have a certain level of security access. Maybe that means that these are security logs. Maybe that means that these logs are pertinent to a single application or a singular business process area, and you only want people within that one application area or business process area to view these logs. That buckets are the primary control for that. However, beyond that, there are also record level and field level security measures to be able to allow or deny access to certain records and certain fields based on Dynatrace's access management policies. So you can mark certain fields, as an example, as sensitive fields so that you can have a certain user have access to the whole log and another user have access to the log's contents that aren't sensitive. Ingesting logs using multiple sources. So as we alluded to earlier, there's many different ways to get logs into the Dynatrace platform. We talked about the one agent, we talked about the extensions and the APIs and so forth. I think worth talking about on this slide are the two items there. So Open Pipeline is that stream processing technology that is used to parse, route, provide permissions or retention settings for individual log records as they come in. So it's extremely granular, scalable, and powerful that way. And OpenTelemetry, if you haven't heard of it, is an open source observability framework for cloud native software. So basically, it integrates through SDKs of your relevant technology. So if you're a .NET house and you've got lots of .NET applications, there is a .NET SDK for OpenTelemetry. And if you're familiar at all with it, it is used to similarly collect logs, metrics, and traces from an application. Dynatrace allows that data to be ingested because OpenTelemetry is more so a data collection pattern than it is a causal AI analytics and data lakehouse engine, which Dynatrace essentially enables and allows. So you are able to use OpenTelemetry as an alternative to the Dynatrace One agent if you've already got OpenTelemetry present in your environment, or if you as an enterprise have decided that OpenTelemetry is for you. There's many different flexible options you can do with OpenTelemetry, and Dynatrace supports those all. Monitoring cost after ingest. So a lot of customers obviously ask the question of, okay, well, how granular can I get with, and what information do I get about what logs on Dynatrace is costing me? So there's various different controls and tools that Dynatrace Grail has to support both monitoring those costs and by default attempting to optimize the use of those costs by default in most cases. So um, users that query or use a dashboard, they are able to cancel those queries at any time. So if a query is running particularly long, um, they have the ability to stop that and then hence immediately stop any costing associated with that query. And dashboards by default do not refresh automatically. So again, these are just some of the controls involved in ensuring that when you onboard logs, when you use logs, you're not unwittingly being charged for a platform that you may not be using. Grail is also extremely transparent in terms of how much cost, so how big the cost is for both the log ingest, the log parsing, and the log querying. So you can see there on the screen are some screenshots of the log ingest overview and the overall query usage overview. So that gives you information about both the volume of data that is being indexed or ingested and searched, as well as the cost and volume of querying those logs as they exist on the Dynatrace platform. So it's very transparent and very granular to that degree as well. And finally, what are some query best practices? So if you've not used Dynatrace before, Dynatrace has a excuse me, Dynatrace has a query language called DQL, or Dynatrace query language, that allows you to query any data in Grail. So that includes logs. It also includes other data types like events, metrics, traces, user actions, and so forth. Here are some high-level DQL best practices if you are writing DQL yourself to make sure that you improve that query performance and again, just make the most out of the platform and get your answers as soon as possible. So number one is narrowing the query time range. This is something that it's very tempting to ignore because maybe you're not sure when something happened or when your data might be present. But if you're able to narrow a query time range, a query that looks for the last day's worth of data is going to be a lot more efficient naturally than one that searches for the last 7 days or the last month. Filter, excuse me, sorry. Filter early to reduce the data set. So as early in your query as possible, if you can filter, do so early on, so that Dynatrace Grail's data lakehouse can, before the data even gets to you, that data can be queried at that level, so that again, you're returning less data, you're querying less data. It's going to take less time to respond to you, and it's going to cost less overall. Use the recommended order of commands. So essentially, there are different commands that you can run with DQL to both operate on individual fields as well as provide multi-field summaries or aggregations. So the general rule of thumb here is if you can work on an individual field before you work on an aggregation like a sort or a statistics or a time series command, then you should do that because again, that allows that data to be edited before summarized and before sent to you. Using string comparisons wisely. So essentially, there are multiple different ways of fuzzy searching or searching for sub-contents of a string in Dynatrace Grail. Whenever you can, make use of matches phrase rather than contains. And if you're able to, try and use an exact match because there's various different processes under the hood that enable string filtering by blocks or phrases, and these are a lot more efficient than filtering for just the whole content of the string, basically. And the last one is limiting the scan data. So if you're unsure as to how much data your query could be scanning, maybe you need a long time range, but you want to make sure you only return a certain amount of information, you can set that in DQL as well. By default, this is set, I think, from memory to 500 megabytes worth of response data, but you can tune that as you need. So it's important to make sure that you tune that to avoid long-running queries due to data spikes or just due to unforeseen consequences. All right. That basically brings us to the end of my presentation. I might just hand back, sorry, to Marge so that we can move on to Q&A and anything else.
All right. So thank you very much, Raymond, for a great presentation. I'm pretty sure our audience gained a lot of insights from you. All right. So we've received several thoughtful questions from our audience. And yeah, so let's open it up for the Q&A. So again, to our audience, if you have any questions, just feel free to um, type it in our chat box. Okay, so I have my first question for you, Raymond. Okay, we are a Splunk shop. So what technical advantages does modern log management bring alongside our existing investment?
Thanks for that. So, I think the main differentiator between Splunk's log management and Dynatrace's log management is Dynatrace's topology mapping that Splunk simply does not have, right? So Splunk is very, very good, yes, at ingesting logs and providing the ability to change those logs. But without Dynatrace's automated topology mapping and root cause analysis, as well as Dynatrace's ability to ingest and understand all of the other data outside of logs that is really, really important for that context, you're just simply not getting the same answer from Splunk as you are from Dynatrace.
All right, so that explanation really clarifies it and it makes the concept easier to grasp for our audience. Here's another interesting question for you. So, can you ingest logs from external systems without deploying one agent?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a few different options, some of which we covered in that presentation, but essentially, if you're using OpenTelemetry, Dynatrace supports that natively. If you need to create a custom integration, either a pull integration where you call your own API and then ingest those logs into Dynatrace, that can be done through an extension, or you can also push logs directly to Dynatrace through Dynatrace's own API. So it's very flexible in that manner.
All right, so relevant point there, Raymond. It's relevant for teams, especially those working through this every day. And okay, so let me take a look. Okay, here's another one. How does modern log ingestion help us cost control costs, especially with high volume logs?
It's a great question, and it's one
Yeah.
that requires constant ongoing tuning and ongoing maintenance to make sure you're getting the most value. But modern log management allows you to achieve a greater floor level of cost to value ratio by allowing you a scalable way to be able to filter, audit, and retain or remove logs that you don't need ultimately.
All right, so thank you for adding that. So it broadens the perspective of our discussion today, yes, in a very meaningful way. And I think I'm seeing another question here. So how do we reduce tool sprawl without disrupting what we already have?
That's a great question, and it revolves around trying to unify your observability into a singular platform that is capable of it. In our case, we talked about Dynatrace today, which I believe is the best platform for unifying this observability. In terms of not impacting what's already there, we at Avocado help teams transition from traditional log management solutions to Dynatrace or to a greater observability framework as well. So through those engagements, through that work, we assist customers by creating a like-for-like solution, both in the old system and the new. And through that like-for-like, you're able to migrate business users, technical users, SREs, etc., across to the single Dynatrace or unified platform without ever losing that visibility for that team.
All right, thank you for that answer, Raymond. And that insight feels really timely and likely reflects what many in our audiences experience at the moment in their team. So yeah, I guess that wraps up our Q&A session for today. So thank you very much, Raymond. Your insights today were incredibly valuable, and I'm sure our audience learned a lot from your perspective. And to everyone who joined us, we really appreciate your time. If we didn't get to your question, our team will follow up by email, and some answers may also appear in upcoming content. So if you'd like to explore today's topics further or learn how Avocado Consulting can support your team, reach out to Raymond via email or scan the LinkedIn QR code too. We'd love to continue the conversation. Also, you can scan this code to follow Avocado Consulting on LinkedIn. Once again, a big thank you to Raymond for sharing his expertise. It's been a real pleasure having you. And a recording of today's session will also be sent to your inbox, so watch out for that. Before we close, Raymond, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to give?
Thank you. Nothing additional from me.
All right. So, with that, thank you again for joining us, and it's been wonderful having you today. Take care, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.